My name is Chloe Vance, and I'm 28 years old, living and breathing the warm, humid air of Charleston, South Carolina. My life is a carefully curated collection of blueprints, historical preservation codes, and the rich scent of old wood and fresh paint. I work for a niche architectural firm that specializes in breathing new life into forgotten commercial buildings. We don't just renovate, we resurrect. We take tired, crumbling structures and remind them of their former glory, blending modern function with historical soul. It's my dream job, and I'm good at it. I can see the hidden potential in a water-stained ceiling or a graffiti-covered brick wall. There's a story in every building, and I love being the one who gets to write the next chapter. I suppose my work has made me observant, patient, someone who believes that things and people should be treated with respect for what they are and what they could be. I was saving every extra dollar I made, pouring it into a personal project that was more heart than investment, restoring my grandmother's old house on James Island, a place filled with memories of salty air and screen doors slamming shut. That house, like the buildings I worked on, had good bones. It just needed some care. My chance to really get ahead, to fast-track my savings and prove my worth at the firm, came in the form of a massive project up in Wilmington, North Carolina. Our company had landed a contract to oversee the revitalization of an entire block of their historic riverfront district. It was a huge undertaking, and I was chosen to lead a small, specialized team. This was my shot at a senior project manager position, a promotion that would mean everything for my future and for my grandmother's house. So I packed my bags, kissed Charleston goodbye for a few weeks, and headed north with my hand-picked crew of 7 others. We were a good bunch, a mix of designers, engineers, and construction liaisons. There was Marcus, the eternal optimist who could find a joke in a pile of sawdust; Liam, our seasoned engineer who had seen it all and served as the unofficial wise old man of the group; and Jessica, our numbers guru who could budget a project down to the last nail. For 2 weeks, we became a tight-knit family, bonded by long days and the shared goal of making something beautiful. The work was grueling. We spent 10, sometimes 12 hours a day on site, covered in a fine layer of dust, shouting over the roar of sanders and saws. We were tired, sore, but proud of the progress we were making. The company treated us well, putting us up in a nice hotel and giving us a generous per diem of $100 a day for food and expenses. We had to spend it to be reimbursed, and this led to a little tradition our team developed. After a long day, we'd find a local restaurant, have a good meal, and whatever was left of our daily $100 limit, we'd leave as a tip for the server. If our meal cost $30, our server got a $70 tip. It was our way of spreading the good fortune around. We couldn't pocket the extra money, so why not make someone's night? It became a point of pride for us, a way to be good ambassadors for our company and just decent human beings. On our second night in Wilmington, after a particularly brutal day of ripping out old, water-damaged drywall, we decided to treat ourselves. Liam found a place online just a short walk from our hotel called the Gilded Anchor. It looked perfect, an upscale bar and grill with dark wood and leather booths promising fantastic steaks and seafood. We were all starving and looking forward to unwinding. The moment we walked in, something felt a little off. The hostess greeted us with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and led us to a large table in the back. The place was nice, but it had an air of faded elegance, like it was resting on a reputation it no longer worked to earn. And that's when we met our waitress. She approached the table with a notepad in hand, not making eye contact. Her name tag read Brenda. She didn't introduce herself, just stood there, pen poised, with an expression of profound boredom. Marcus, trying to break the ice as always, said, "Evening, we're ready for some serious food. We've been working like dogs all day." Brenda just gave a slight, noncommittal nod. "What do you want to drink?" she asked, her tone flat. We placed our drink orders, and she walked away without a word. The first sign of trouble came when she returned with the drinks. She'd gotten 2 of them wrong, bringing a diet soda instead of a regular one and a lager instead of the pale ale Daniel had ordered. When we politely pointed it out, she let out a theatrical put-upon sigh. "Fine," she muttered, snatching the 2 glasses from the table so abruptly that some of the beer sloshed onto the polished wood. She didn't come back with a cloth to wipe it up. We had to use our napkins. We tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just having a bad night. We've all been there. The food, when it finally arrived, was genuinely fantastic. The steaks were cooked to perfection, the seafood was fresh, and for a while we lost ourselves in the simple pleasure of a good meal and good company, the frustrations of the day melting away. Brenda, however, was a ghost. She never came back to check on us, never asked if we needed anything else, and we had to flag down a passing busboy just to get our water glasses refilled. We could see her across the room, leaning against a service station, scrolling through her phone. The neglect was palpable. As we were finishing up, laughing about something one of the contractors had done on site that day, the conversation turned to our tipping tradition. "This steak was about $35, Marcus said, patting his full stomach. "That means some lucky server is getting a $65 tip from me." We all murmured in agreement, calculating our own generous tips. Despite her sour attitude, our plan remained the same. A job is a job, and maybe a huge tip would turn her night around. That's when Brenda reappeared, holding a stack of checks. She dropped them unceremoniously in the middle of the table without a word and walked away. Guess we have to figure out whose is whose, Jessica said, starting to sort through them. We all paid separately for reimbursement purposes, so it took a minute to pass them around. I picked up my bill and looked it over. Food, $36, drink, $8, tax, $3 and change, and then I saw it. On the line marked tip, written in the same loopy handwriting as the rest of the bill, was an amount, $6.90. She had filled in her own tip. I glanced at the bottom of the receipt where she had used a highlighter to mark the suggested gratuity section with 15% circled. I looked up and saw the same confused, then annoyed, expressions dawning on the faces of my teammates. Did she just write in her own tip? Daniel asked, holding his receipt up to the light as if in disbelief. She sure did, Liam confirmed, his voice low and tight, on every single one of our checks. We all stared at each other. This wasn't just bad service anymore. This was something else. This was presumptuous. It was insulting. On the front of the menu in small print, it did say a gratuity of 15% will be added to parties of 10 or more. There were only 8 of us. She knew there were only 8 of us. She was trying to force a tip from us, banking on us not noticing or not wanting to make a scene. Well, Marcus said, a sharp edge to his usually cheerful voice, I guess she's missing out on our plan. The good-natured spirit of our tipping game vanished, replaced by a cold knot of indignation. This wasn't about the $7, it was about the principle. She hadn't earned a tip with her service, and she certainly didn't have the right to take one without our consent. We sat there for a moment, a silent debate raging around the table. Part of me, the tired part that had been hauling lumber all day, just wanted to pay it and leave. I wanted to go back to the hotel, take a hot shower, and fall into bed. Arguing seemed like so much more effort than it was worth. But the other part of me, the part that believes in fairness and respect, was furious. She had treated us with disdain from the moment we walked in, and now she was trying to take advantage of us. I saw the same conflict on my team's faces. Jessica looked annoyed but resigned, already pulling her credit card out. Liam, however, looked just as angry as I felt. He caught my eye and gave a small, firm shake of his head. No, we weren't going to let this slide. We waited for Brenda to return to collect the payments. When she finally sauntered over, she didn't even look at us, just reached for the check folders. Excuse me, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. She stopped and looked at me, her expression a perfect mask of impatience. There seems to be a mistake. You've added a tip to all of our bills. She glanced down at the checks in her hand. Yeah, 15%. The menu says that's for parties of 10 or more, I pointed out, keeping my tone level. We're a party of 8, she shrugged, a dismissive, arrogant little gesture that set my teeth on edge. Oh well, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Just sign the receipt. And with that, she turned and started to walk away, as if the matter was settled. That was it. That was the moment my exhaustion evaporated and was replaced by pure, cold resolve. This woman's entitlement was a force of nature. She believed she was so untouchable that she could openly disregard the restaurant's own policy, our questions, everything, simply because she couldn't be bothered. The rest of the team was now looking at me, waiting to see what I would do. I was the team lead. This was my call. I could let it go, let her get away with it, and we could all go home and complain about it in private. Or I could do something. The low point wasn't just her attitude, it was the feeling that she might actually win. That her laziness and arrogance would triumph because good, tired people would decide it wasn't worth the fight. I thought about the pride we took in our work, the long hours and the attention to detail. I thought about the respect we tried to show everyone, from our clients to the servers we met. And I thought about this woman who showed respect for no one and expected to be rewarded for it. All the progress we had made in building our team's morale, all our quiet acts of generosity, felt cheapened by this one person's blatant disrespect. I took a deep breath. No, I said to myself as much as to my team. This isn't right. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping softly on the floor. I felt the eyes of my team on my back, a mix of support and apprehension. I straightened my jacket, walked past the table where Brenda was now chatting with another server, and headed directly for the bar at the front of the restaurant. My heart was pounding a little, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I was no longer just Chloe Vance, architect. I was a representative of my team, a defender of the simple principle of fairness. I reached the polished mahogany bar and caught the eye of the bartender. Excuse me, I said, I need to speak with a manager, please. The bartender, a professional-looking man in his 40s, nodded. Is there a problem, miss? Yes, there is, I said calmly. It's about our service and our bill. He gave me a concerned look and disappeared through a door behind the bar. A minute later, a different man emerged. He was dressed in a sharp suit, his posture straight, his expression serious and attentive. He looked like someone who was actually in charge. Good evening, he said, extending a hand. I'm Mr. Evans, the night manager. How can I help you? I shook his hand, relieved. He was a stark contrast to Brenda. I explained the entire situation, starting from the moment we sat down. I told him about the wrong drinks, the complete lack of attention, her dismissive attitude, and finally the fact that she had manually added a tip to each of our 8 checks and then told us to just deal with it when we questioned her. I wasn't loud or emotional. I just laid out the facts one by one. As I spoke, Mr. Evans's expression grew more and more grim. He listened patiently, not interrupting once. When I finished, he let out a long, slow breath. "Miss Vance, I am so very sorry," he said, his sincerity obvious. "That is not how we do business here. That is not acceptable on any level. Please give me one moment. I need to speak with my employee." He turned and walked purposefully toward the back, his face a thundercloud. I stood at the bar, waiting. My team was watching me from our table, giving me small, encouraging nods. The adrenaline was still humming through me. I had done my part. Now it was up to the system to work. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably only 2 or 3 minutes later that the door to the back swung open with a crash. It was Brenda. She was stomping out from the kitchen area, her face red and contorted with fury. She wasn't just walking, she was marching with a vengeance. She had already taken off her apron and was clutching it in a balled-up fist. She stormed past the bar, heading for the employee lockers or an office on the other side. She went under the bar's pass-through just a few feet from where I was standing to grab her purse from a cubby. As she straightened up, her eyes met mine. They were filled with pure, unadulterated hatred. She knew I was the one who had complained. She knew I was the reason her night had imploded. In that moment, I could have just stayed silent. I could have let her walk away, but the sheer injustice of it all and the memory of her sneering, "Oh well," compelled me to speak. I leaned slightly forward on the bar, my voice quiet but clear enough for only her to hear. "By the way," I said, a little smile playing on my lips, "I was planning to leave a $60 tip to max out my daily allowance. My friend Marcus over there was going to leave 65. In fact, our whole table was going to tip you about $400 combined." Her face, which I thought couldn't get any more furious, somehow managed it. The color drained away, replaced by a ghastly pale shock, then flooded back in a wave of crimson rage. The realization of what her greed and laziness had cost her hit her like a physical blow. For a second, she was speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then she leaned in close and mumbled, her voice a venomous hiss, "Fucking asshole." She spun on her heel and stomped out the front door of the Gilded Anchor, letting it slam shut behind her. She was gone. A moment later, Mr. Evans returned to the bar. His composure was back, but I could still see the lingering anger in his eyes. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice firm. "Again, I want to offer my sincerest apologies on behalf of the entire restaurant. That server's employment here has been terminated, effective immediately. She will not be an issue for you or any other guest again." He then did something I absolutely did not expect. "Please return to your table. There will be no bill for you and your team tonight. Your entire meal, including all your drinks, is on the house. It is the very least we can do to make up for this unacceptable experience." I was stunned. I thanked him profusely and walked back to my table. When I told my team what had happened, that Brenda was fired and our entire meal was free, a cheer went up. Marcus slapped the table in triumph. Liam raised his water glass to me in a toast. The mood shifted from indignation to elation. We had stood up for ourselves, and not only had justice been served, but we'd been rewarded for it. The consequences of Brenda's choice were perfectly poetic. In her attempt to force a measly $7 tip from me, she had not only lost out on a potential $60 tip, but she'd lost her entire job and cost the restaurant a bill that was well over $300. Our story with the Gilded Anchor didn't end there. That was only our second night in town. We had nearly 2 more weeks of work ahead of us. The next night, after another long day, we debated where to eat. "You know," I said, "I think we should go back to the Gilded Anchor." Some of them looked at me like I was crazy, but I explained. Mr. Evans had handled the situation perfectly. He deserved our business, so we went back. Mr. Evans greeted us at the door like old friends. He seated us personally at the best table in the house and assigned his top waiter to our section. The service was impeccable. The food was, once again, delicious. And that night we left our massive, per diem-fueled tips. We went back every single night for the rest of our 2-week stay. We became regulars. The staff got to know us by name. Mr. Evans would stop by our table each evening to chat about our project. We tipped generously every time, making sure the people who actually worked hard were rewarded for it. The restaurant easily made back the money from our one free meal and then some. We had turned a terrible experience into a positive relationship. When our project in Wilmington was finally complete, we left town feeling proud of our work and with a great story to tell. I got the promotion. My leadership on the project, and I suspect Liam might have mentioned the restaurant incident to our boss, sealed the deal. I'm a senior project manager now, and the restoration on my grandmother's house is well underway, funded in no small part by my new salary. I often think about that night. It wasn't just about a rude waitress. It was a lesson in standing your ground. It taught me that sometimes you have to push back against the small injustices, not just the big ones, because ignoring them lets entitlement grow in the dark. Brenda wanted something for nothing, and she ended up with less than nothing. All we wanted was to be treated with a little basic respect, and in the end we got that and a whole lot more. The best part, the little twist that still makes me smile, is that Mr. Evans sent me a Christmas card that year. Tucked inside was a gift certificate to the Gilded Anchor and a handwritten note. It said, "Thank you for helping us raise our standards. Good customers make good businesses." It turns out, sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about making things better.